Welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Alex,
And I'm Ed.
and today we're reviewing a request from a viewer of the show called Dassul, and the album is Composure by MAALA, and this is the debut album from a pretty big pop star over in New Zealand. I believe he was like a contestant in the X Factor, like the New Zealand version.
Really, I didn't know that.
And yeah, and I think he took like a year or two to release this after he got like third in the show, and yeah, I mean, it's a pretty atypical, not standard, I guess, but like very accessible pop album. Vocally, at some points, I think he sounds like a cross between Harry Styles, who also the album cover is reminiscent of his solo debut, and Charlie Puth. If Charlie Puth was good, I don't know, there's some vocal points, like he has a lot of high-pitched notes that remind me of Charlie Puth. But yeah, that's what I thought of his voice. And yeah, so what did you think?
Well, in terms of his voice, I was more reminded of sort of James Blake style
Yeah,
vocals, and unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of that style of singing. I'm not saying the guy can't sing. Don't misinterpret
yeah.
that. I'm just not a fan of that style of singing. Like, I'm the guy who thought that the James Blake interlude should have been taken off Beyonce's last album, just for a point of reference, because
Oh, right, okay.
that style of singing just doesn't do anything for me, and unfortunately that's obviously going to mar my listening experience with this a little bit.
I did note that he did sound a bit like James.
I should probably preface my thoughts on Composure by stating that when I say this album's not for me, I'm not shutting out pop outright. I mean, Alex, as you know, I'm actually a really big fan of pop music, both in its purest form and when it's implemented into a plethora of other genres.
Yeah, that's true.
Just to quickly list off some of the mainstream pop artists I thoroughly enjoy. I love Carly Rae Jepsen, as has been established on the show.
Yes.
Bit of Kylie, bit of Britney Spears. I think Toxic is
Oh,
a brilliant
yeah.
song.
It is indeed.
It sounds like I'm just making excuses because a very kind viewer has given us a request. I'm just trying to explain my position of, like, I'm a big fan of pop. Just this type of pop didn't really grab me in any way. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Alex.
Well, this type of pop to me is like better than the type of pop I hear every day at work on the radio. Now, yes, there's an argument that anything that gets overplayed you'll get sick of because you become too familiar with it. It offers nothing new, and yeah, you just get sick of it. And this is more of what I'd like commercial pop to sound like, that like this exact style, because this is not the exact style of commercial pop that gets played, which is EDM type pop. Some pop a bit similar to this does get played, but yeah, this is closer to James Blake than that stuff, truthfully. And yeah, I actually think this is a really appealing pop album to my view, because I don't mind his vocals, and I think there are one or two really solid tracks on here, and I can see why he's having hit singles in New Zealand. These songs are certainly accessible and enjoyable enough and fun. So although there's no clear standouts here except maybe one song, it's maybe too consistent for its own good, and these songs all sound very similar to me. But yeah, I'm not averse to this album. I found it pretty agreeable in essence. So we're in a bit of a disagreement here, I guess.
Well, you'd think, I guess. I think I just have, like, a different type of standard for music. I was not offended by any of this. I wouldn't chastise anyone for enjoying it. Not at all. It's a very easily digestible album, no doubt. But just for me, it feels a bit too safe and typical. The synths sound really nice for the most part. There's at least some variety between the songs. I mean, yes, there is definitely a consistency throughout here, but not the sort of thing that you'd really criticize most pop records for. But it's not anything that I haven't heard before, and that would be absolutely fine if the music on this record stood out to me on other fronts, like, for example, maybe MAALA's personality being unique and coming off as likeable or uniquely him, or maybe the songwriting taking some interesting and unpredictable turns, but the whole thing really just takes the pop blueprint and cements itself in it like its life depends on it. For some people, that's going to be a really good thing. For me, I wasn't really too bothered.
Yeah, well, there's one song in here that I was quite impressed by above everything else, and that was the third track, Feels So Right. And
yes! I thought that was the best track as well.
Yes, so we are in agreement over an aspect of the album after all, and I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this song, I like this one a little bit more than the song before it, Lose Your Love, which I believe is actually the big single, but I just feel like this is a little less ordinary and generic, and there's some really warm synth lines, like as the main hook of the song, with him just saying "Feel Your Love." Like those warm synths are for the chorus part. Do actually come close to the EDM I was criticising other pop for this not being similar to, but honestly, it's just so good. And there's actually some subtle bass playing during the verses that sound like a low-key version of some of the instruments on Ariana Grande's Into You, which was one of my favourite pop songs of last year, so anything that reminds me of that gets a favourable nod from me. This is how slow pop is done right, I'd say, because this is a bit slow. It's not that fast-paced. A lot of this album isn't actually that fast-paced, because that's just how pop is. It's not too fast.
Yeah, I like this song. I think if this isn't a single, it definitely should be a single. Like you were saying, if you heard this sort of stuff on the radio, it wouldn't irk you in any way like maybe a lot of what you'd hear on the radio currently. And that's not me bashing radio pop, it's just sort of, if you're at work or something, for example, then you're going to want to hear some stuff on the most agreeable radio station that doesn't completely irritate you, and none of this is irritating. All of it is generally pretty good. The production is nice and lush, I like the synths, and Feels So Right is absolutely the highlight for me. It's one of the moments on the album that comes really close to being kind of explosive.
Yeah, sort of, in the chorus. It's bit.
My only issue with this song is the repetition of the song title during the chorus. I think it's kind of uninspired.
I guess so, yeah. You could say that.
The chorus on the song Stranger, if you don't mind me changing topic, is a little more adventurous, but I found the overall feel of that song to be a little insipid. I think that's probably my least favourite track on the album.
Yeah, you mean the I Just Want to Know part of the chorus on Stranger?
Yeah, wasn't too fond of that, to be honest. The record on the whole has some decent choruses, but again, they're all sort of lifted from the pop rulebook to the extent that I need some spice in here. I need some extra sort of oomph to really get down with music like this. And back to positives, though, the chorus on Hush is pretty good, with its swelling synths and clattering drums, and this is one of the few moments where my appreciation of a chorus applies to the vocals here too, and the lyrics. For what it's worth, definitely one of the stronger moments on the record, and I'd probably say the exact same thing about the closer, Soak. I thought he closed the record out in a nice way, and this is a really tight, compact listen on the whole, which is definitely a good thing for this type of music.
Yeah, going back to Soak there, I really like that ending, like Soaking in Your Love. That was like quite a good cathartic sounding chorus for him. That was a nice song.
I don't know about that. I think he really runs the whole soaking in your love cliche into the ground. It's not a bad chorus on its own merits, but, you know, decent song. I like the clicky instrumental with the screeching synths in the background and the 80s tinged bass swells that are going on here. In the context of the album, it's a really decent way to close things out.
Yeah, there's a lot of decent things about this. That's the problem. It's decent at best. Even I, who maybe my standards for this sort of stuff is a bit lower or whatever. Maybe I just enjoyed it more naturally or whatever. You know, there's some other songs.
I mean, it's too decent for its own good. It's far too decent for its own good, in my opinion. There's not much bad on here, but there's not much good either, from my point of view. you know, it's fine. It's just fine. If the vocals were a bit more exciting to me, maybe I'd like this as much as you do, Alex. But to me, it just vocally and in terms of his personality, MAALA really just comes across as a third-rate James Blake-esque performer. And like I said, truthfully, I've never found that type of vocal all that appealing from any artists. The guy can sing, but there's no real personality there for me.
I've still thought there was like a very low level of experimentation. Not experimentation, but like playfulness beyond what is normal in pop music. That like maybe having like alternative R&B like beats similar to like Frank Ocean or something, or James Blake more, to be true about it, is not that experimental, but there's some points on here where the beats had a bit of an unusual sound to them, which I thought, like on Let Me Know, I thought the rhythm was quite finicky sounding actually on the choruses, and there's some real good vocal effects on here. That's the thing, the like first song on this album is just some overused modulated vocal effects, and I can imagine that you were not a fan of that intro. If
No, I think the intro is probably the weakest track. I thought it was very sleepy. And when I put this on, I was like, oh my god. But thankfully, it picked up a little bit after that by giving us some actual songs.
Yeah.
But, you know, whatever. I do agree with you to an extent. There is an amount of playfulness on here, and it is vaguely on the most base level possible, slightly experimental in terms of how these synths sound and how they're played and how they're programmed. But the songwriting is not experimental in the slightest. The songwriting is just strictly pop, which, again, absolutely fine. Not trying to make excuses. I just need more than that when I listen to pop music.
That's true. Okay, so I think our opinions on this album have kind of run their course. There's not much else to say. I could say, like, I like the guitar and Let Me Know. That's true. But, and, you know, Forget About You is like a trying to be a ballad, except it's too fast to be a ballad, and I feel like that's true of a lot of songs that have lyrics that would work for a ballad, but just because in the pop setting we're in now, you can't have just an acoustic ballad. Starving by Hayley Steinfeld is another example. They just don't exist anymore. They're all like EDMified, so yeah. Some, I agree with you, there is a very, very low level of experimentation. The lowest you can get, but it does exist. So yeah, I'm gonna give this.
It's there.
Yeah, it's there. So I think we'll go into ratings now, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10 because I found it quite enjoyable. Really, completely agree with you that it's very surface level at some points, and yeah, his voice. It isn't actually my favourite part of this. It just didn't bother me as much. But then again, I do like James Blake, if we're going to keep comparing him to that, which is fair enough. And yeah, like, Feels So Right, and some other songs were pretty good. So thank you for requesting this. I overall thought it was pretty decent.
What was the name of the lovely viewer who suggested this to us?
Dassul.
Dassul, please pay no attention to me when I say I think this is a 4 out of 10 album, because my opinion should mean nothing to you. Yeah, it fuses some EDM-influenced production with synth pop in a way that I can see appealing to a lot of people. It's very tasteful. You mentioned another release that integrated EDM production into pop songwriting and didn't work on that. I can't recall what album it was you mentioned there, but yeah, it just doesn't satisfy that itch that I usually turn to sugary pop music to have serviced, you know? I found the vocals to be something of a turn off for me personally. Thought the songwriting was a bit too typical of pop, doing very little to stand out. And while the sound of this album is generally decent, and it's not annoying or difficult to take in for the majority of its very brief 35-minute long duration, it doesn't give me much of anything to praise either, and that's a problem for me. Pop can be so much more inspired, and ultimately better than this, in my opinion.
It can indeed.
It's utterly harmless. I respect MAALA for doing what he's doing, but at the end of the day, this is not in line with my personal tastes. If this sounds good to you, by all means listen to it, because my score should not affect that kind of recommendation at all. I think more hardcore pop fans will definitely enjoy this on some level.
Yeah, I can agree with that, especially since I could maybe call myself that. Not too sure, but yeah. Thanks for requesting this, Dassul. I'm not sure how you say your name exactly, but I think that's generally right, just like MAALA, actually. Yeah.
Well, if Alex got your name wrong, then I'm sorry that I also got it wrong because I'm trusting Alex here.
Yeah. So if this is anything good to go by, we'll try and take a few more requests as the videos come in. And yeah, thanks for listening. If you've listened to MAALA before, you might have. Tell us what you think. Check us out on social media. We exist on there. Subscribe for more content. And we also have another side show project on Ed's channel called Singles Club, which is more content of us talking about music, singles in particular. Right, Ed?
Hell yeah, we do. Although that's on hold for a little while, I'm afraid. But feel free to check it out. We reviewed Paramore's lead single from their latest album. We reviewed Fall Out Boy's lead single from their latest album.
Yeah, there's some good singles
There's all sorts
there.
of goodness to be found.
Plenty of goodness.
And some bad ones.
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks for listening, guys. Yeah.
See you later, guys.